Hello, 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 and welcome to not quite the next episode of the Best Games period. For a variety of reasons, scheduling being primarily one of them, this week you just have my dulcet tones to listen to. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and this week you might notice that it's a little bit sparse in the vocal department, and that's because we all have busy lives. Jeremy has an entire hospital to look after and a kid, and Daniel has a kid and 2 jobs and does this on the side, so really getting us all together all the time isn't exactly the easiest thing to do, so we are going to start doing these little, you can think of them as mini-sodes, mini-casts, I guess would be more appropriate for a podcast. But essentially we're going to be giving honorable mentions to games that we might not otherwise talk about on the main show. And one of those I'm going to be talking about this week is definitely not one that we would ever talk about on the main show, but because this is my honorable mention, or at least one of them, we'll be doing these on weeks when we can't necessarily coordinate our schedules all the way. The game I am choosing for this week is a little-known PS1 survival horror game called OverBlood. Now, a lot of people don't know about OverBlood because it's really, really rough. It was at a time in the PS1's life when people had no clear idea how to really do survival horror right. And survival horror itself was a relatively new thing. Even though the horror genre in games had been around for quite some time on PC, a little bit of time on console. And OverBlood is very unique as a game because it falls into a very small category that I like to just call so bad they're good. It's very hard to make a so bad it's good game because oftentimes the game itself is just bad, unplayably bad. And games that are unplayably bad are not fun to play, so you don't play it. That's just kind of how it goes. But with OverBlood, it's unique. I mean, that's biggest understatement probably of 2016. OverBlood is unique. It's unique in that it's functional. You can play it. It plays terribly, but you can get through it. And even the controls themselves play out like a joke, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but it's true. When, like, everything from, like, the animations your character does to the weird proto-tank controls, like, I hesitate to even call them tank controls because they are so rough and nonsensical that it boggles your mind. This was before joysticks, so imagine playing a PS1 game with just a directional pad that's in 3D, and not only is it in 3D, but everything you interact with, there are 2 different kind of spectrums. One is the standing up spectrum, and the other is the crouching spectrum. So you can move around entire stages crouched, interacting with things differently than if you were standing up. Which, maybe on paper that sounds cool. In practice, it makes no sense. It's very cumbersome and irritating, but also really funny in a way. So I should probably back up a little bit. OverBlood was made by a Japanese developer named River Hill Soft, and it was published actually by Electronic Arts, which is kind of baffling. But the cover of the box calls it a 3D sci-fi adventure. And it is certainly an adventure game. It's certainly a little bit sci-fi, I guess. But it's one of those, like if you were to try and explain Troll 2 to someone, it gets complicated very quickly. But the basic premise of the game is you wake up, your main character's in a cryogenic chamber, and they have amnesia, they have no memory of anything that happened or what's going on, of course, because amnesia. And they just have to survive the situation. Basically, maybe the best encapsulation of OverBlood is that opening maybe 15 minutes of the game. And you wake up from this cryogenic sleep, and right off the bat, the game has a countdown timer. Like a bar is slowly depleting. And if that bar gets all the way down, your main character freezes to death, and you get a game over screen. So you can lose very quickly in this game if you can't figure out what's going on. And there are actually like 2 or 3 different stages of this opening area. The first stage is you have to find this button that is, it's fixed camera angles in early PS1. So you have to, kind of interpret the really rough graphics in order to find this button. You press the button, and it makes the room slightly warmer, but not that much warmer. And in order to survive, you have to figure out that you have the way to get into the next room. You get into the next room, you have to open the right box, and in that box is basically the vest, the puffy winter vest from Back to the Future that Marty wears, and your main character puts that on and says the iconic phrase, "Great, with this I won't freeze to death," which I guess those puffy winter vests are very, very warm, but I don't think anyone who's ever worn one of those in real life has ever had that thought, "Oh, great, with this puffy vest I won't freeze to death." Mind you, while you're looking for it, and if you have no idea what's going on, your bar is steadily depleting. So I'm willing to bet that everyone who played this game when it came out died in the opening 10 to 15 minutes of this game. Which was probably a reason why not a lot of people played it, or have fond memories of it. Now, when I say people don't have fond memories of it, I mean, even at the time when it came out, it was considered not that great. I guess it's more accurate to say that OverBlood came out slightly after Resident Evil. We're talking 2 to 3 months after Resident Evil. So, yeah, not necessarily... probably had all of its mechanics set in stone and the general story and game mostly done at that point. But it is one of the first games to kind of allow players to switch between first and third person. And you need to switch into first person in order to solve some of the game's, I'm going to put this in air quotes, puzzles. Because there are puzzles in the game the same way maybe having your kneecap broken is a puzzle for you to solve. You're just walking down the street, someone breaks your kneecap and runs away. We've all been there. And then we have to make our way home. Same way that's a puzzle is the same way OverBlood has puzzles. They're not particularly enjoyable, but they are so bizarre and unexpected that it's mind-boggling. This is the kind of game you want to be playing with maybe 3 or 4 people, and a good 2 to 3 or all of you more than a little inebriated, because geez Louise, is this going to be fun to watch your friends struggle with, and to struggle with yourself and know their pain. Relatively early on in the game, in fact during that opening sequence, your main character encounters this tiny little robot named Peepo. And Peepo is... I mean, he's basically the best character in the game. He's kind of like the R2-D2 of OverBlood. He clearly knows what's going on, and he's more intelligent than pretty much all the other characters in the game. And he's just a little floating robot that kind of helps you out. And then... I don't want to go too deep into the story because the story is bananas. But basically, you find out that your main character's name is Raz Carsey. Raz space Carsey. And he has been frozen for eternity, according to the computer that he looks at, for unknown reasons, and he is in what appears to be like some sort of cultist spaceship, underground lair, undersea facility place. It basically attempts to escape after he wakes up. And he quickly finds out that there are zombies and weird mutants running around in this facility with him. And he meets this other normal person named Millie. And then he finds out that he is also like weirdly infected with this mutagen thing. And it's very hard to wrap into words why I'm talking about this in an honorable mention episode of the best games period. But I firmly believe that OverBlood is the kind of game that not everyone should play. I don't think everyone would enjoy this, but if you're like a fan of So Bad They're Good movies and you want to kind of experience the equivalent of that, I would say start with OverBlood. There are other games out there that kind of recapture the same magic. The big famous one for kind of last gen was Deadly Premonition. And there are more out there too. Like, these aren't the only two, but between OverBlood, Deadly Premonition, there are other great, terrible, bad games that are out there that are definitely worth your time if you are into that kind of thing. Another one being like Galarians is one I've seen that is absolutely bonkers. There's actually a sequel to OverBlood called OverBlood 2. And the reason I'm not talking about that one is it's A, really hard to get a hold of, and B, OverBlood 2 also was shipped with a glitch that can essentially just destroy your game. And it's, for obvious reasons, maybe work your way up to that one if you're really desperate for a game that's so bad it's good. Definitely worth it if you can get it to work. There are robotic dinosaurs, hoverboards, all kinds of crazy stuff in OverBlood 2 that highly recommend seeing that if you can. But topping the original OverBlood is, I would say, almost a Herculean task. It is everything from the animations. Like when you crouch down and you press against a wall, which you will inevitably do because tank controls plus early 3D environment, there are invisible walls everywhere. It's a mess. But when you do that and you're in third person, your little Raz Carsey bends over in his little winter sweater vest, and he basically like makes like the Reagan peace sign, kind of. At least that's kind of what I imagine he's doing. He has his two hands out in front of him, and it's very awkward looking and very funny. And every time you die, which you will do a lot, there's this scream, and maybe I can find it. And if I can, I'll put it in right here. But it's classic. It's a classic death scream, and it's great. It's one of my favorites, actually, next to the Wilhelm scream. Classic OverBlood scream. Like, this game is pretty great. In fact, I'll give a little bit of a shout out here. The reason I even know about it is because early on in my career, I got my start over at Game Informer, and right before I started working there, they were kind of entering the Let's Play arena with their super replays, and one of their first super replays was of OverBlood. Just a random PS1 survival horror game they found in their vault sitting there with dust on it, and it kind of grew its own little cult following from that, because no one had heard of it before. No one played it on YouTube. In fact, when they played it, there were no walkthroughs of OverBlood, so they were basically playing it blind, which in the modern age of video games is incredibly rare. And the fun fact, you won't find really an official Game Informer Facebook page, but there is a there is a Facebook page that's kind of the de facto Game Informer Facebook page, and and it's called "I Watched the Entire OverBlood Super Replay," and that kind of became a little inside joke. And shout out to them, shout out to that group. I'm a part of it. Great group of people. Sometimes they get a little bit salty, but that kind of goes with the internet territory these days. In general, they're a good bunch, good apples. I've been kind of struggling to put into words OverBlood for you all, but it's essentially one giant joke. But it's a joke that is the best. It's the best possible kind of joke. It's the kind of joke that is the building block of every so bad it's good movie, and that's the fact that the people who made it very earnestly tried to make something good, and that's kind of necessary in order to make a movie that's so bad it's good. Like the people who made Troll 2, they tried very, very, very hard, but they were terrible filmmakers, and they were working in a language they didn't know, with actors who couldn't understand them, with ridiculous premise and a very small budget. And so all these different outside factors kind of turned it into this crazy, crazy, hilarious thing. And the same thing kind of happened with OverBlood. You have dawn of the 3D era with the PS1. You have no set precedent on how survival horror is supposed to work on a console. And so you're translating all these different things into a new form that you don't fully understand how to interact with. You're doing it on console, which is practically unheard of at that point for a horror game. You are able to include voice acting, which is in its infancy for games. So, not the highest quality voice acting around. And you have, for the first time, writing that can be voice acted and is just a mess of translation issues because it was made in Japanese and then translated. The translation is weird. It's very bizarre. You have, to its credit, like for the time, this game probably looked amazing. But looking back at it now from 2016, we're seeing almost photorealistic graphics in our games now. It is incredible. It is incredibly ugly, but in a way that is consistent and endearing. Like, I will argue that the robot design for Peepo, like his animations and sound, all that is perfect. I love Peepo. Peepo is great. But in terms of everything else about the game, like, you can tell a lot of effort went into it. And a lot of that effort didn't have the intended effect, or at least it might have at the time, but now in 2016, it has, instead of adding gravitas or emotional weight, it adds comedy instead. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's great. I think it's great that we can now go back and enjoy a game that was intended to be scary and, suspenseful and have this weighty, like, mythos behind it, and just find it utterly ridiculous and funny and, maybe a little bit quaint in some ways. But we can rediscover a magic we didn't know it had back in 1996, which, geez Louise, this game is 20 years old. OverBlood is 20 years old. That's crazy. I would recommend that if you have a PlayStation or, an original PS1, or you have one of the very first gen of PlayStation 3s that could actually play and was backwards compatible, I would recommend tracking down OverBlood. You can get it for like $10 off eBay, I think. At least that's what I got my copy for. And it's relatively cheap compared to some of those more obscure games that you're going to find online. Basically, the graphics have not aged well. The character models are all kind of laughable, but the best part is maybe the animations, because they didn't have great technology for rigging back then. I mean, this was even before the Phantom Menace released in '99, so you're talking pre-advanced CGI techniques leaking down to game dev from the film industry. So the utter ridiculousness of the animations and the reactions that some of the characters have are just incredible. They're, maybe like a slight shrug at like the death of somebody, or like a tiny little gasp when somebody falls over. The melodrama of the connection between man and machine, I'm sure at the time it was meant sincerely, but now it is hilariously great and terrible all at the same time. So if you can, grab a hold of a copy of this game and play it, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's probably best enjoyed with friends, or like if you're a Let's Player. Holy crap. This game is a gold mine. It's a gold mine if you're a Let's Player. So give it a shot. Check it out. And next week we'll be back with a new episode, a full episode. I'm going to just kind of wrap it up here. It's my honorable mention. Check out OverBlood. You know how people do charity walkathons? Well, Extra Life is basically that, but with games. You get friends and family to pledge you money, and you choose a hospital when you sign up, a Children's Miracle Network hospital, and 100% of everything you raise goes directly to that hospital to pay for sick and injured kids. This year, our event is on November 5th, and so please sign up, maybe get a team together, grab a few friends, and just play some games and heal kids at the same time. It's the biggest win-win ever. Plus, you have an excuse. So really, you have an excuse to play video games for a long time. So it's a win-win-win. The best kind of win. So get on that. Grab a few friends, maybe get them to sign up too, and start asking your friends and family for a few sweet, sweet donations. Because honestly, those kids need our help, and we're in a position to do something about it, even if it's just a little bit. So remember Extra Life. You can visit the website at extra-life.org and sign up. You can also view the community website at community.extra-life.org. And please, as always, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Leave us a review on iTunes. You download or listen from SoundCloud, Libsyn, iTunes. Leave us a comment. You can find us on Twitter at Best Games Period, and you can find us on YouTube, The Best Games Period. And leave us a message. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what you think of OverBlood. If you've played it, let us know. We'd love to hear your stories, your sob stories, or funny stories. And like I said, next week we will be back with a full episode, hopefully. So, in the meantime, thank you for listening to me babble about a little game called OverBlood.